past few weeks of our Fragment Quilt Along, we've been sewing our beautiful blocks. Now we'll join these pieces to create the quilt top. Have your layout diagram handy? You will find it in the quilt pattern. Grab your blocks, because today they're making their grand debut on the design wall. This exciting step will give you a preview of your finished quilt top and allow you to make any final adjustments before we bring everything together. Today we'll sew the top together step by step. If you don't have a design wall, you can just as easily do this on a large bed or even on the floor. Have some place between the blocks where you fill in your sashing strips, and they give the quilt a calm frame. You can also rotate the blocks if you like them better in a different way. Once you are completely satisfied with your layout, you can sew it together, but you should have a reference for that. If you go with the same layout as we did, you can go to your pattern. If you have any changes, maybe in size, or maybe you have turned the blocks, make a snapshot with your handy so you can refer to that picture later. I start with my middle row and bring down block by patch and keep that order to stay neatly organized. That's what I love. So, okay, with a 1/4 inch seam, I start sewing two pieces together, and I always place the block on top so I have a control where the seam allowance will go. And I can speed up that process by chain piecing. Is sewn together, and now we can press it. We will press the seams towards the sashing strips. Next, we want to insert the horizontal sashing strips. As you can see, they are slightly longer than the pieced block rows intentionally, so we can adjust them later. So let's start with the first one. I place my piece block strip on top of my sashing strip right sides onto each other, because I want to control over all those seam allowances so they don't flap, or that I can control such a matching point here. And I smoothly flat both layers out so that there are no waves, and pin it in place. Once you have attached all the 4 sashing strips to one edge of the border strips, it's time to trim off the excess fabric on the end of the row. I align my ruler so I have a really perpendicular cut. Now this edge has to align with the neighbored row, so that is my reference now. So we want also have our blocks exactly underneath each other. I start pinning with my edge, but there are also the sashings which I want to keep aligned so that my vertical grid is also straight, so I can flip my row a little bit back and see exactly if these both seams are aligned, and if not, I can still adjust it quite a bit. That looks all good, ready for the sewing machine. The center is now finished and there is one step left, attaching the border strips. You will attach the smaller border strips to the left and the right. Remember, we cut them slightly longer so we can adjust them to the needed size. And then in the next step, we will bring on the larger border strips on top and bottom. Now I show you an alternative method because this piece is quite large to handle it on the table. We will do that on the design wall. I bring my border strip over . And I've carefully flattened everything out. So I can now see where the bottom of my quilt center is and where I have to put on my pin as a marking where to trim my border strip. That wasn't hard to do, was it? So you do the same thing now for the upper and lower border strip. And that's it. You have finished your quilt top and you have accomplished all the tasks in our quilt along. You can be really proud of yourself. But wait a minute, there is something missing. Just a cherry on top. A beautiful quilting. Look at that. This one is a modern spiral edge-to-edge quilting, which I got from my longarm service. But every modern geometric simple quilting would work very well for this quilt. And if you want to go to your domestic sewing machine and do it yourself, I have a couple of tips here too. For example, you could frame every of these blocks with stitch in a ditch and then support the grid with parallel quilting lines. Or you can go even further and frame every patch of a block with stitch in a ditch. Depends on how fluffy you want to have your quilt. And another tip I have is to just quilt with an irregular grid over the complete surface. That looks great too. As for the binding, we refer to our YouTube tutorial, which has 3 detailed tips on how to make your binding perfect. Mine is sewn with the decorative stitch method. So, I hope you liked this quilt along. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you get an info each time when we put out new content. And stay tuned for more. See you next time around.